Hi, it's John from Crafts by John UK. Today's card is this cute and simple happy anniversary card, which has been made using this die. So this is a hearts and dots die. It's one that you can use in the middle of a page. It has no border, and basically it cuts out on the card, and then you get all these little bits that you can use to embellish around the edge. So what I've done with this card base is I've actually printed the border with a green edge and a grey border inside, and I've printed the text as well, happy anniversary. I've then added the die cut, so I've cut all the elements out. I've then coloured in some of those hearts with a green kind of sage colour. It's the Distress Oxide in, I think, sage green. And then basically I've coloured a piece of paper which I've sat behind it as well, so that we've got the same green behind and in front in the foreground. I've then just backed it on some lime green paper and then put it onto a 6-inch green card blank. I think you'll agree that's quite a nice, easy anniversary card, but it looks quite nice. So if you're interested in how I did that, stay tuned. Okay, let's get started. I've sped this up a little bit so that it's not too long, and you can see I've started off with my blank base panel, which I've printed using my printer onto a decent cardstock. I've done this in PowerPoint. I've got some templates set up with 6-inch by 6-inch layouts, and I usually give myself a faint grey line to cut to, so that I can trim the card down and get it to the right size. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. Printing is quite useful, especially if you've got awkward text, but also it's handy for giving you nice crisp outlines. If you want to kind of frame your card, which I've done here, you can see the lines around the edge. And I've got two lines here, a dark grey and then a green, and I tend to flex the colour to match whatever I'm doing on the project. So if you're adept at PowerPoint, and it's quite easy to do this stuff, I know it's difficult for some people, but there are other programs you can use, WordPress and others you can use to do similar stuff. But anyway, I use this technique quite often because it's handy for printed bases where you need to have strange custom text. So there's our base layer. I've now got our die. Now this die, I think I bought it from Temu or somewhere, it's unbranded, but basically it's just a stack of hearts and dots, and I'm just going to lay it out in the middle of my card, stick it down with a couple of little bits of low tack tape there and run that through my die machine. This cuts quite well. It doesn't leave a huge impression around the edge, which is good, but it actually does create a really nice effect on the card. And the good thing is, as I've said in the intro video, you get lots of lovely little hearts and little dots that you can then use to kind of embellish what you have cut out. So I'm just cutting that in my Gemini. There we go, and you can see that is now cut, and you'll find that some of them fall out, some of them stick to the die, and then it's just a case of sorting through them really. Now the hardest bit of this card is actually working with all these little dots and things, because some of them are quite small and they get stuck to your fingers left, right and centre. So I usually use my tweezers to poke everything out. I don't tend to do anything with the dots, I just use the hearts. This is a little bit of a process, and there you can see you end up with a lot of stuff. So I typically sort out my hearts, put them over to one side, and then get rid of everything else basically. And the hearts come in a variety of different shapes as well. So there are, I think, 3 different stages, or 3 different sizes. There we go. So that's what you end up with. Still some odd bits to poke out there. That's quite attractive in itself. You can back it with different colours. A fade of colour would be quite nice. Just removing a slight little mark there, but basically that's what you've got. Now I need to now make something to sit behind it. So I looked at green paper, but I thought no, because I want to colour the hearts and I want to match the same colour through the holes as I do with the hearts that sit on the top. So that is the bundled sage Distress Oxide. I was struggling to remember the colour name. One little tip, when you're working with tiny little hearts like this, don't dab straight down and straight back up, because you'll find you pick it up. The easiest way to do it, you can see I'm doing it, is twist it slightly. So you dab on the top, but twist off as you come off, so that you come off the side slightly, and that way you'll find it won't pick it up as badly. If you go straight down and straight up, you'll find it picks up the thing that you're colouring. So this is actually the most complicated bit of the whole card, to be honest, working with these tiny little hearts and just getting them coloured. Excuse me. There we go, so I'm just colouring those, making sure I've got a decent colour on them. I do probably 2 or 3 coats, just to make sure it's completely covered. I could, of course, have cut them out of another piece, but it's just easy to colour the ones you've got. So I'm just going to move them out of the way and clean that ink up before I mess something up. There we go. And then back onto our card. Actually, no, I'm going to do the paper. So first of all, I draw around this so I know where I need to ink. I don't want to do a whole big panel and waste ink. What's the point of that? So I just draw around the die and then I just dab that with my sponge. You can see this is a really nice mid-green colour. And as I said, you could always do a colour fade as well. You could do, blue to green or whatever. And that looks quite nice through the hearts. A rainbow, I've done rainbows through there as well. It's quite a small space, but we can make it work. Right, next steps to cut this out. You can see I've done this on quite thin paper. You don't want thick paper because you'll find the border of the paper when you put it under the die cut will show through. You do it on just thin, sort of basic copy paper, which this is. It's quite thin and it's easy. And then I've got my glue and I'm just going to dot around, all around between the hearts and the dots and around the edges, and then I'll just lay it down and stick it on itself basically. I'm not even going to put any sellotape or anything around the edges to hold it down. I will just let it hold itself down naturally. That way you've got less borders that then create creases on the front. There we go. Just give that a press. And you can see that looks really nice. Now we've got to embellish now with all the bits and pieces that we cut out. So that's the next stage really. I'm just giving that a good press. I'm not sticking it down any further than that, but just make sure you press it down and it'll hold itself in place. There we go. Now time to pick up all these pieces. Now obviously the first thing we've got to do is flip them all over so that we can get some glue on the back. That's actually more difficult than anything else. Just controlling these tiny little bits is difficult. Getting glue on them is then the next challenge, to be honest. Apologies, that's slightly in the way, but you can see the job I'm having with some of them. Just putting a little dot of glue on, the thing picks itself up. Oh, it's a nightmare. I actually use the pin from the top of my little pin glue bottle to just hold it in place. Not quite fiddly. You could always do it by putting some glue onto a sponge and then just dabbing them onto the sponge, but I mean, whichever way works for you. Then you can see I'm just placing them around really. I'm not mirroring anything, not doing them in any particular order. Just dabbing them around basically, wherever it feels like it looks good. And as I said, there's lots of different sizes, so you've got different sizes to play with. And it does enhance because you can, when you look at the card, you can see obviously that it's mostly cut out, but then you've also got those bits that are proud and outside of the die cut area, so it does look quite nice. Don't quite know what made me do green. Green's quite unusual really, but there we go. And I do like the very clean cut look of the printed sentiment. Now the next thing to do is to find some green paper. So I went into my stash. I hadn't got any by me cut from any previous project, so I had to go digging in my paper store and have a look for some green. I decided I'd go with a kind of a lime green. I didn't want it all to be the same sage colour because I could of course use the same green and just edged a panel, but I thought no, I want something a little bit different just to lift it a little. So I found this quite nice lime green, and I decided to use my crafter's companion because I've got a slightly wobbly edge on that top bit, so I thought I'm going to actually distress the edges. So I then went around with this. It's a handy little tool. It's got some teeth on it that you run along the paper and it just gives you a kind of a distressed, almost torn edge, which is quite interesting. then basically I'm just going to stick that down, layer that with the lime green. I also went around the edges with the same bundle sage. Just thought that ties it all in quite nicely. And on a ripped edge it does always look quite effective. There we go, that's giving it just a little bit of colour. And then it's just now a case of layering that up. And I tend to use double-sided when I stick my layers down. I know some people use glue. I do find it wrinkles the paper sometimes, so I think it's always a bit safer and easier with double-sided. I know it takes a little bit longer, but I do quite like it. And as I said, I didn't do anything to stick that panel. I just left it as is. It will hold itself down with the weight of the card. There we go. So that's our lime green panel. I'm just going to stick that down, just eyeball it, and then trim that with my scalpel and my metal ruler. There we go, now we just need to put it onto a card. So I have got some green card blanks. They were in a Christmas pack I got from the range, I think it was, which I've used before for Christmas cards, but I thought that could look quite nice actually, green on green, and they're a darker green, they're kind of like a holly green, so I thought that's good. That's why I picked the lime green, because I thought that could look quite interesting, get the contrast of those two different greens. Here's the card blank, you can see. Just need to fold that and score it. And then it's just literally a case of now sticking the two together. Bunny ears technique gives me a little bit of wiggle room. And there we go. You could always embellish if you wanted with more gems and things in and out of the hearts and the dots, but I decided to leave it as it was. And that's today's card, quite a simple one, a bit of a printed base, a little bit of die cutting, using those offcuts and colouring them. It looks quite nice. You can see here in the close-up it's got quite a nice effect. And that's today's card. If you've enjoyed that, please give me a thumbs up and like and subscribe to my channel, and then you'll get notified when I post new content. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.